So once again, happy Friday, everybody. Here we are, Buddha Center, Temple. Let's get started like we normally do. I think we've all done this before, so let's just do a short period of bell meditation like we always do. I'll give you a moment, get into a nice meditation posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dhamma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. So, the subject for today is consensus. And there's a lot of different aspects to consensus, to making a decision, right, with a group of people. So we're going to go over some different aspects. You see I have a visual aid here to my right, so we'll be using that. We're going to start out talking about the Sangha. That's where we are, the Sangha. This is where your personal practice benefits from practicing with and learning with, and by the way, from others. Right? Not just me, but all of us, right? We have things that we add in. Good comments, good questions. Happy Friday, Willie. And here, Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike are welcome to participate, because we are always looking as a Sangha and listening for actions and thoughts that can be useful and productive in the promotion of human flourishing and the alleviation of suffering. We don't care where it comes from, we just want to learn new ways to do it. And in our practice of pluralism, we realize that there is more than one path. So we listen to those different paths. Do we always agree with them? No, but that's okay. We always want to at least listen. And there will be times that difficult or controversial subjects come up during Dharma talks or during discussions with the Sangha. It is important that we approach these experiences with an open mind, without judgment, and with the idea that we cherish the opportunity to speak openly, and we should offer that same to others, that opportunity. Challenging ourselves is a part of any Buddhist practice, and that sometimes that means we got to broach subjects that may not be easy or comfortable for everybody attending. It is one's choice when they want to opt out of a conversation, but they should never try to stifle a conversation. So if you don't want to get involved, don't. But don't try to minimize the involvement of others, if you will. We all know, those of us that have been on the path for a while, that much of our Buddhist practice is done alone. It's kind of, us talking to us, if you will. And when we meditate and uncover dispositions, whether they're wholesome or unwholesome, it's only us there. When we ask ourselves those rigorous self-honesty questions, it's just us hearing the answer. The conversations we have with ourselves can be more easily mediated than conversations that we have with others, though we have to admit we kind of don't mediate our own internal conversations maybe as much as we should. We first learn to speak openly and mindfully to ourselves. That's our goal. We need to speak openly and mindfully to ourselves. Then we want to do the same with the Sangha. And then finally, we want to be able to take this kind of important life skill and use it with family and friends and even strangers. Social consensus. There's the word, finally. Social consensus. Or sometimes it's called intersubjective agreement. This is a key means of knowledge in Buddhism. And it is vital to developing a positive or a wholesome personal character and also a wholesome society. In order to better understand our interconnectedness with the people around us, we need a place like the Sangha where topics can be openly discussed and where judgment is set aside and where in the end some sort of social consensus is the goal. And there are two crucial elements that can make or break the advancement of learning in a group environment, and that's trust and respect. Now, I want to stop here for just a moment because this question often comes up, and that's this idea that social consensus means that we all have to agree. No, social consensus means that most of us agree, right? And that those that don't agree, at least that don't agree maybe with the subject or the answer, agree with our ability and opportunity to talk about it openly. But again, two crucial elements that can make or break the advancement of learning in a group: trust and respect. It is very unfortunate here in America that we have this axiom, or this saying, if you will, that trust and respect must be earned. Society isn't naturally viewed as an interconnected group where trust can be just openly offered. And in meetings of the Sangha, we begin developing and then we reinforce that group trust through realizing that we are in a place with people that have like interests and that this is a place of mutual support. It is our responsibility then to offer trust and respect to others because we recognize the possibility of a Buddha in each human being. Respect for the views of others is echoed by the realization of pluralism. Not everyone thinks, believes, or reacts the way everyone else does, because we are all unique expressions of the universe. We accept thoughts, beliefs, views, and reactions that are presented in a way that respects those same things from others. So we might not agree with someone's belief, but we respect it, and we respect the person that holds it. Discussions can be held with a group of highly divergent opinions when each respects the other. So you can have some pretty loud, raucous discussions and disagree and actually get something out of it as long as everyone respects the other person. And this is vital to reaching social consensus in any situation. In a group as diverse as the one here at the Buddha Center, it is crucial that we realize pluralism, that we can discuss subjects with people that have commitments to worldviews that can be much, much different than our own. And we can do this while retaining our own commitments, right? Our own worldview. This doesn't mean, though, that sometimes in these discussions, our mind doesn't get changed, right? We don't recognize or realize that maybe we're not quite on the right track, or maybe there's something that we didn't know. So we're in the midst of talking to someone, having a discussion, an argument, whatever you want to call it. And we got to think about speech. And the Eightfold Path, this is kind of our guide to speech, right? The ethical conduct that we need to engage in. And positive speech, the whole idea is tell the truth, speak friendly, speak with a friendly voice, if you will. Be warm, gentle, and talk only when necessary. Pragmatically, we know that the truth isn't always the best way to promote harmony, though, because the truth itself can be situational at times. Not that the truth itself is situational, but how we respond to the truth can be situational. Experience has shown us, though, that not speaking divisively in any sort of situation has a better chance of leading to harmony and social consensus. So we don't want to try to drive a wedge in, right, when we're having a discussion. Let's try this pronunciation. In the Abaya Jakumara Sutta, and this is in the Gahapa Padi Vaga section of the Mahima Nikayas, there's this thing called the Discourse to Prince Abaya. And this is where the Buddha speaks about speaking mindfully. He offers a lesson. Here the Buddha was asked by Prince Abaya this question. Has the Buddha ever made a statement that would be disliked by and unpleasant to someone? I'm going to repeat that. Has the Buddha ever made a statement that would be disliked by and unpleasant to someone? Basically, has the Buddha ever said anything that made someone uncomfortable or angry? I'm going to have to say he probably has, right? This is what it says in the sutra. In the same way, Prince, in the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be unfactual, untrue, unbeneficial, unendearing, and disagreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, unbeneficial, unendearing, and disagreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, beneficial, but unendearing and disagreeable to others, he has a sense of the proper time for saying them. In the case of the words that the Tathagata knows to be unfactual, true, unbeneficial, but endearing and agreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of the words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, unbeneficial, but endearing and agreeable to others, he does not say them. In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, beneficial, and endearing and agreeable to others, he has a sense of the proper time for saying. Why is that? Because the Tathagata has sympathy for living beings. Lots of words there. That's why I broke it down in the chart. Because in the same sutta, the Buddha lays out 6 types of statements. I just read them in the language of the sutta, and it doesn't matter whether these are written or spoken statements, but they're distinguished by 3 things. Their truth value, and we've talked about truth, whether they have a use. Let's call it, this is the pragmatic thing. Are they useful or useless? And then the last thing is, are they pleasant or unpleasant? So I want to look at each one, and here's what I'd like you to do. As we look at each one, I want you to think of your own examples of these type of statements. So let's start with the first one. Untrue, useless, and unpleasant. I chose this sentence. If more people carried guns, there would be less gun deaths. Okay, we know it's untrue. It's a useless thing to say when you're talking about gun rights and the limitations of guns, right? And it's unpleasant to think about that more people carry guns and more people die. Even though they say it would be less gun deaths, we know that's untrue. So again, untrue, useless, and unpleasant. And I'm sure you guys have thought of sentences of your own that fall into that. The second one, true, useless, and unpleasant. I chose what a doctor could say to someone whose loved one had just died for whatever reason that is. True, useless, and unpleasant. Your loved one died in great pain and misery. It's true, that's what happened. But does it have any use to the grieving? No. Is it unpleasant? Well, yeah. So again, think of a sentence or a phrase that is true, useless, and unpleasant. The third one, true, excuse me, true, useful, but unpleasant. Guns are tools designed to be used to kill. It's true. It's useful because we need to know why guns are designed, what they were designed for, but it's certainly unpleasant. True, useful, but unpleasant. Fourth one, untrue, useless, and pleasant. So even lies can be pleasant, right? In fact, that's what many lies are told for, is to somehow make something more pleasant or make the person feel better. Untrue, useless, and pleasant, I chose this. Could have been worse. Right? It's untrue because, yes, it could have. It could have certainly been worse. It's useless because the situation or the experience is already over. There's nothing that can really be done about it anyway. But it is pleasant to know that things can change. That, hey, it could have been worse. So again, think of your own statement that might fall along those lines, and try to, in all of these, I want you to try to think of statements that you may have actually made, or maybe you heard somebody make. Number 5, true, useless, and pleasant. I tried to find one for this, and the one I came up with, I don't know if I'm very happy with, so if somebody out there has a better suggestion for this one, that would be great. I'd love to hear it. True, useless, and pleasant. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. It is true. It's a useless thing to say, again, in the debate about gun ownership and gun rights. And the whole pleasant part, that's where I'm kind of lost here. Is it really a pleasant state? As I look at it more, I don't think so. So maybe we need a better example there. So again, if somebody thinks of a better example, let me know. And then number 6, true, useful, and pleasant. Stricter gun laws will save lives. True, useful, pleasant. So those are the 6 that the Buddha offers in the sutra. But in thinking about this, I think there's a number 7, at least for in a contemporary environment that we find ourselves in. I think there's a number 7. And that number 7 is untrue, useful, and pleasant. So basically, a lie that has value both emotionally and intellectually, if you will. And that's, again, I think of a doctor. Somebody has had they're at the hospital, a loved one has just had a car accident, and they've died. And the doctor comes out and says, your loved one died without pain and suffering. The doctor knows that's not true. But isn't it more useful to the grieving family to not make them have to grieve more, to not put more on their plate, so to speak? So it is useful in that point to say, they were fine. They were in no pain when they died. It says, true, useless, and pleasant. Ooh, I like it. Thoughts and prayers are with you. Oh, I think I'm going to have to take that one. I hope you don't mind. In fact, I'm going to put it in my notes right now, because that's much better than mine. So, since we're talking about consensus, what do you think? Does that fit with true, useless, but pleasant? So think about if somebody says that to you. What is your reaction? If he says improved, I like that. We'll go with improved, right? Anytime we can improve something. Said, I would say that is useful since it makes a family feel better that you are thinking of this during a hard time. I totally agree. That's an excellent example. And these are the things that we have to look to as we're practicing, because we want to keep our speech as appropriate as possible. You know, I would actually go with much better than mine. My thoughts and prayers are with you, at least on that one. But so let's get back then to the Buddha. He would speak only number 3 and number 6. So let's go over those. True, useful, and unpleasant. That's number 3. Number 6 is true, useful, and pleasant. So these are the 2 that the Buddha would use, and then only under the right situations, what we would call situational use, right? Notice that they both had to be true, they both had to be useful, and it didn't matter if it was pleasant or unpleasant. Because pleasant and unpleasant, that's an emotional context, and the Buddha kind of set that aside, and it seems for him the 2 categories that made the most impact were truth and useful. But pragmatically speaking, number 7 can be useful in maintaining harmony in some situations, like I spoke about a doctor talking to someone in the hospital. So consider the funeral of a person whose unwholesome qualities and actions have shown clearly during their life, but at their death, it seems that all is forgotten as people offer eulogies at their funeral. Untrue, useful, and pleasant. Think about it. And I'm thinking here of the eulogies that were presented at the death of George Steinbrenner. This was in 2010. He was the owner of the New York Yankees, and he was a man that was well known in life to be really aggressive and really outspoken and sometimes just a nasty, profane guy. And a lot of people over the years talked about how they didn't like him and he was a jerk and all that kind of stuff. But in many ways, Mr. Steinbrenner may not have been a pleasant man, but at his funeral, you'd be hard pressed to realize that given how people spoke about him after his death. And this is not unusual. But the reality is, do we speak the truth at a funeral, or do we say untruths just to make things nicer? You said, I wonder why the Buddha did choose those 6 types of statements. The number of possible combinations is greater than 6, I think. Yeah, well, that's why I came up with number 7. And there may be other combinations. I actually haven't looked into it, but there may be. And it says, I wonder if the Buddha didn't include number 7 because he saw all lies as useless. And I'm right with you on that. I think that may very well be the idea that, the Buddha was saying, don't lie. And if he would have said, well, I accept an untruth to use, then that would have gone against what he had been telling people and teaching. But pragmatically speaking, the number 7 has value. At least in our contemporary times. Maybe in the Buddha's time, it didn't have value. We don't know. So I brought up emotions. So I want to, just a quick thing about emotions. 2 little quotes. Because emotions have so much to do with how we react to these statements, untruth and truths and pleasantry and non-pleasantry and all that, useless and usefulness. So 2 quotes. First one is from Dr. Lawrence J. Peter. He's just an American educator. He said, quote, speak when you are angry and you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret, unquote. In other words, be mindful of what you're saying. Be mindful of your emotional context when you say it. And this is very important when we're sitting with a group and we're discussing something and trying to come to some consensus about the idea, is that we can't do it when we're angry. And we don't want anger to intrude on such a discussion. Then the other one is from my root teacher, Shi Shang, Venerable Eubank Sensei. And he said this, quote, most people make the mistake of engaging another angered person in the heat of the moment. Don't. That is not the time, because the rational, self-aware parts of the human mind are not in control. Again, if we're engaging in a discussion and trying to reach a consensus on something, and somebody does get angry, then we don't want to engage that person. We want to find a way to alleviate some of their anger. And then another thing is our mindful speech. But while this was about consensus, it was also a lot about speech, how we talk to one another, the statements that we make, truths and untruths. And at meetings here at the Buddha Center, I encourage open discussion. But I also encourage non-confrontational disagreement. Meaning, disagree, but do it in a nice way. It's just different ideas, right? It's not a threat to anybody. A different idea is not a threat. So these same 2 ideals can be used anywhere and at any time we engage with others. Open discussion, non-confrontational if there's disagreement. And like the 3 pure precepts, cease to do harm, do only good, do good for others, we can use this as excellent reminders of our responsibility to promote harmony and health and happiness, the whole human flourishing. See cease to do harm, do only good, do good for others. So when we're here or you're anywhere and you're looking to reach a social consensus or a consensus even between, a couple of people, or by golly, even a consensus with yourself, right? Those little voices in your head, you've got to look at the statements that you're making. And I also want to connect this to rigorous self-honesty. When we're engaging ourselves in rigorous self-honesty, the statements that we make to ourselves, we have to be equally aware, equally mindful. The statement I'm making to myself, is it true? Is it useful? And is it pleasant? Pleasant in the idea that, am I being mean? Am I attacking? Am I being aggressive even with myself? So how we reach a consensus is closely tied in how we speak to one another, and how we speak to one another is closely tied to the emotional context that we allow it to have.